UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Welcome, everybody, to UAP Crossfire, where four alpha males decide the biggest question in the universe. Is Donnie Eckert an alien? And then after that, if aliens do exist. Good stuff. So, before we go any farther, hey, first thing I want to do is give a little bit of a shout-out to our guest tonight, Jennifer Stein. What I want to do is play this Sonoma Summit thing. It's a great thing that she's going to be involved with. I want to play it right now so we can get that out there to all the audience. Hold on.
From mystery to transparency, the Skyfire Summit 2025 lands in Sedona Friday, October 17th for 4 days to reveal the truth about UFOs and honor Travis Walton on his upcoming 50th anniversary of his famous UFO encounter from 1975. Visit sedonamufon.org for details about the Skyfire Summit 2025. There is only one 50th anniversary. It won't happen again. Don't miss it. Join us and help us change history.
Folks, if you got the opportunity, and I would highly recommend you go to it. It is an amazing thing with Jennifer Stein, Travis Walton, and the rest of the crew that's going to be there. You will learn a lot, and you'll have a lot of fun. Those people are a lot of fun. I've interviewed Travis Walton several times and talked to him off the record, and he's a great guy. And Jennifer Stein, there's nobody better than Jennifer Stein and stuff. Well, maybe Donnie Eckert, but, you know, we'll go from there. Well, let's introduce everybody here. So, to the side of me, I'm not going to point because I always point in the wrong direction, is Dan Carlson. We also know him as the Padre. Padre, give me one of those. I need a blessing for tonight so I can get through it. There you go. Buddy, how are things going there, Padre?
Things are good. It's been great, and the Black Hills, the fall colors are gorgeous. We've been 80s, and it's just wonderful. I went fishing this morning, got my limit, and now I'm back here all sunburned and ready to talk UAP.
What'd you catch?
I got my limit of bluegills.
Really?
Yeah, sunfish, panfish. And
I got a tuna.
You got a tuna?
Yeah, it's the supermarket. They had them on sale. So I got one of those down there. It says, and of course, right below my man Padre is Commander Cobra, our ace pilot. Commander, how are you tonight?
Things are well. A little tired. Long trek for the last couple of weeks to.
Can you tell us where you've been?
Yeah, I was out in Oklahoma at Tinker Air Force Base, and then I was down at Eglin Air Force Base after that.
Yeah. Wow. Are you going to be going out anyplace else?
I'll probably be back out in Tinker in October for a follow-up meeting.
Awesome. For those who don't know, that Commander Cobra is still a pilot. I want to thank him for his service. He still does service for this country, and so kudos to Commander Cobra. And of course, the best comes to last, isn't it? My man, absolutely, who's come back on the show with a new computer. He sounds great. He looks great. My man, Donnie Eckert. Hello, Donnie. How are you?
I believe I think we have 64-bit on this computer. I think it's
really?
Sinclair that he was using.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it was an old Amiga. You know, an old Amiga back in the day, Amiga. But no, I first off, I wasn't here for 2 weeks. I profusely apologize. Believe me, it wasn't my idea. And by the time we got it all shaken out, I had taken my other computer, the one that blew up, to the Geek Squad, who are supposed to be absolutely phenomenal PC guys, right? Wrong. I went in there. The guy said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, my sound system blew up." And what's weird, I mean, this is not my first rodeo, guys. I've been personal computing since 1987. I said, I went in trying to find the stuff so I could reinitialize it. It's telling me I don't have anything. But yet when I go into my settings, it says my audio is great. Okay, so they take it. I'm sitting there for an hour and a half. He comes back out and he said, well, your sound system is shot. That'll be $100. Never again will I ever go to the Geek Squad. I'm telling you right now.
This is what happens when you hang out in those bad chat rooms.
Oh,
what happened?
Hey, I know. But anyway, this one seems to be doing great. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. And I saw Padre give the sign of the cross. Thank you for that, Padre. I'm going to accept some of that.
Okay.
For the computer. And upward and onward,
accept
guys.
some for yourself too. don't be shy.
Yeah, you'll need a little bit of that cross action.
In fact, later on after the show, you can put your hand on the screen, and we'll do a blessing like they used to do on the radio shows.
Yeah, he'll blame you now if the screen blows up or bursts out your bird. The power of Christ. I'm just trying to help you there, Don.
Oh, I appreciate it.
We needed that when we were exercising the computer 2 weeks ago. So we don't need that now. Now we need the blessings. That's what we need.
All right.
But I'm still eating oatmeal. Sooner or later, we're going to get back to regular food after I pay.
I'm sure after this show, your revenue stream will kick right back in.
Don, I bet you got the first nickel you ever had. Come on.
I think he was doing Bitcoin with the other computer, and that's what's going on.
He's got to have a safe somewhere in that house behind a picture or somewhere. He goes, I'll never know the money I have. All right. Well, listen, enough of this. We got to get on with the show. So I want to first introduce a person that I highly respect, highly admire. She is a fantastic lady. Let me just put that
I just wish she was a little bit more upbeat. The pre-show, I don't know. I'm hoping that she's a little bit more upbeat for the show.
You gotta insult her before we bring her
I'm
on.
not insulting her at all.
The last hour before you say something negative. I mean, there she goes. She's gone. Never mind. Anyways, so as I was saying, I think
the other button, Chris. Hit the other button. That's the one that brings her up.
I don't hit the buttons. Bill does, but I want to introduce her for God's sake. She's a wonderful lady, as I was saying. She is the Sedona State Section Director for MUFON. Don, you know about that program. Jennifer has served as the Pennsylvania State Section Director also in 2002. Professionally, Jennifer evolved into a documentary filmmaker, creating 3 award-winning documentaries on the UFO subject. It Could Happen Tomorrow, part of the Disclosure Dialogues of 2011. Travis, the true story of Travis Walton, who will be our second guest on tonight. And let me tell you, he's a great guy and stuff. And the 2023 film, Accidental Truth. Now, she is best known for her film and working with Travis, the true story of Travis Walton. And she produced that in 2015. She has a studio of her own called On Wings Production. She's a woman of many talents. There's not so much I could say about her, but it would take a whole hour of the show. And then, of course, there's going to be Travis Walton on our show tonight. Travis was a timber logger. And for those who don't know Travis Walton, let me just explain that Travis was a timber logger in the Sitgraves National Forest. I had to put that on a piece of paper because I couldn't pronounce the word. I tried all day. And in 1975, on November 5th, a crew of 7 loggers encountered a disc-shaped craft of unknown origin hovering about 20 feet above the forest floor. And at the end of the day, while they were exiting the Turkey Springs Valley where they had been working for the past month on the conclusion of the forestry contract, as they drove on a roughly cleared forest trail up to the top of the Mongolian Rim, or whatever that is, they drove by a clearing on a small ridge. And there they encountered a UFO. And of course, Travis says, hey, I want to investigate this a little more. Gets out of the truck, goes to an area fairly close to the UFO. And there's all kinds of different things. The one I believe happened is that some static electricity hit the craft. The stuff hit the hit the craft, and when the electricity hit the craft, it bounced and hit Travis, and it knocked him for a loop, and he was probably either dead or almost dead. And actually, the aliens uh, abducted him. I mean, and brought him back to life. He was under their medical control for days, and then when he woke up, he had a surprise that it wasn't the doctors or the hospital. It was actually on a craft. So let's bring Travis up. Hello, Travis. How are you today?
Hello, nice to join you.
Nice to join you. We met years ago. We had a wonderful conversation at the California MUFON Symposium. I never forgot that, Travis. It was one of the highlights of my career in MUFON. And of course, Jennifer, there isn't anything that I could say about you other than you were one of the best people I've ever met. So with that, I want you to, how did you get involved with productions, Jennifer?
Well, I used to be an event coordinator, and I did weddings and bar mitzvahs and corporate parties, and I started to film them as part of the event that I was doing. I would film it for my own purposes to sell the next job, because video is worth, $1 million or words when, pictures are just worth, they say
Right.
$1,000, but, film's worth more. So I started to play with home video camera equipment, of course, when my kids were little. And I developed technical skills over the years of doing that. I also did a lot of nonprofit work for schools and charities and churches, not only as an event coordinator, but as a filmmaker. And I just finally realized that, I guess I've got film skills. And when I met Travis and I met other people like Stanton Friedman and Kathy Martin and many other people in the UFO field, Peter Robbins, Rich Dolan, I started to do some film work with them as well. And one thing,
Did you meet Travis?
Pardon?
How did you meet Travis, Jennifer?
Well, I was first introduced with him by Peter Robbins. I was Peter Robbins' assistant at the 2010 Roswell UFO Festival. And I was kind of like a Gal Friday. I ran around and picked people up at the airport and, put up flyers and, got waters and did whatever. And we had dinner with Travis at the end of the conference, and we all looked at Travis and said, your experience is as significant as the Roswell event. And, maybe you should have a conference yourself celebrating the 40th anniversary. So I ended up getting involved in doing some film prep in advance of that 40th anniversary conference, which I sort of helped to coordinate, but actually Karen Brard took it on and did a fabulous job. But I ended up realizing I had enough stuff for a film about Travis and the loggers. So that's when I made the documentary.
You have done a fabulous job. That documentary I watched, and it was fabulous. And then I watched Fire in the Sky, which actually done by Big. And I'd rather see your documentary than Fire in the Sky. I think that was so much better.
Well, we specifically did it, Chris, because no one had. Nobody in Hollywood did a decent film about his story yet. And we're hoping that they might in the future. But we thought a quality documentary was really in line with the 40th anniversary. So I kind of stepped up to the bat and put that hat on after I kind of took the hat for coordinating the conference off my plate and passed that to someone else and just focused on making a documentary, because that stands the test of time. A conference comes and goes. It's kind of like performance art, right? It's an event, it's for a weekend, and it's done and gone. But a film, you can always pull out and show again, and you can put up on various streaming channels. So it's now in multiple languages. It screens around the world. Film Hub is our distributor, and they've done a wonderful job really promoting his story around the world, especially in light of the 50th anniversary this year.
The 50th anniversary.
Hard to believe.
It is amazing. Here's the thing that Fire in the Sky did, and I thought this is terrible, that what they did was they didn't really tell Travis's story, because when we talked, there was so much more to his story about, him being in a scout ship. He didn't realize he was in that was a hangar bay for many scout ships, and he actually had a fight with the little aliens. I mean, he was swinging away and everything else. That
It's
never
interesting.
was in the story. He wasn't afraid. He says, "Come on, let's go, let's take it on," and stuff. So all that stuff you brought out in the documentary. Well, let me introduce Travis. Travis, thank you for
Yeah.
being on the show tonight. Your story is one of the most authentic abduction stories I have ever heard. I got a chance to talk to you. It was amazing, and there's so much more to that story than people realize. And
Yeah, and it's new stuff comes out occasionally, but Jennifer's definitely included a lot of stuff that never got done before.
oh, I know. And let me just ask this before I pass it on to my teammates here. Do you find that your memory has been repressed and that it's slowly starting to come back of the whole thing?
No, I think my memory's pretty much the same. It's traumatic. I don't like to go there, but
I don't blame you.
just for interviews, and then I go back to an ordinary life.
All right. Well, let me start with Commander Cobra. Commander, so we got Travis and Jennifer. They've done the documentary. Obviously, he's one of the most famous abduction cases.
Absolutely. Well, Jennifer, was a real pleasure to meet you off air before we came in. And of course, Chris thought I was trying to be a smartass when I said that hopefully that you would maybe pick up just a little bit on the personality first. It's obviously you're very engaging. And I liked the work because the prep for the show, some pretty dramatic stuff. And you did talk about a MUFON in Pennsylvania. That's going to be in Bucks County for October this weekend, the conference. And if you go MUFON PA, you can look that up. And anybody who drops me an email tonight, tomorrow, I'll connect it up with Jennifer and for that event. Now, Travis and I met here in the New England states a few years back. And Travis, I don't think you probably remember me very well. You were very, very professional, very, very nice person. And I found you very genuine right from the start. And one of the things that we spoke briefly about, I was a little bit younger. I was about 14 when you had your experience, but I remember the kind of the things that came out shortly after you were found, and it made the news and the whole UFO angle. Of course, Fire in the Sky was the original movie, was something that really left me wanting to find out more. And then I was able to pick up the various books over the years and then meet you. But the one thing I'm always going to say is you've been very consistent and very genuine every time I've heard you speak. And to me, that is a critical factor in this. And then the other pieces of evidence that have come out over the years that I'd like you to react to, I believe it's the hunter and his wife that saw similar things in there. And I believe there's probably even more witnesses or records of witnesses in the past that have left that hasn't quite surfaced yet. That's why revisiting this, not from the more painful aspects of what you went through, but what's gone on. And to me, it's the what happened in the aftermath. I mean, I think it's logical that people that looked at this looked for a very simple, straight line answer that that foul play was engaged and went forward. I can understand that, but there tends to be a kind of a more sinister or more programmed kind of way to dissuade this, which immediately makes me, and I think my other hosts, think that there's something more happening here. And the final thing I'll put up, my wife was with me, rarely makes these kinds of visits and shows and conferences, but you got a chance to talk to you. She's originally from the West herself, and she's a pretty good judge of character, except with me. I don't know how I pulled the wool over her eyes with me, but she's was really impressed how absolutely genuine and nice you were, and then she didn't really know much about the story. She knew a little bit about it. So I put a lot of weight in that because she's a pretty good surveyor, diviner of those kinds of things. So it's great to talk to you again. And I'm
good to talk to you.
I'm curious in one area, your reaction is to what other information you think might come out.
Well, the skeptics didn't survive the test of time, as time went on, it came out that they had just fabricated things to try to discredit the case. But some other interesting things came up, were discovered, evidence at the site that wasn't immediately discovered. The effect that the presence of that craft had on the growth of the trees near there was pretty phenomenal, pretty definite. You don't get growth rings on a tree just willy nilly. This here the tree's 85 years old, and then in 15 years it doubles in diameter.
Right. That's not something that's easily explained, especially in that part of the world.
You get one growth ring per year with trees, but these were much thicker growth rings suddenly. And then it turned out that growth was primarily or dominantly on the side of the tree towards where the craft had been relative to the tree.
And
Well, I was going to say, excuse me 1 second, Jerry. In our chat room, one of our folks in the chat room asked, Travis, how long did it take for you to adjust to your experience? And I think that's a fairly involved question. Delve into it as you want. But I have always been amazed from your experience how well you have shared it over the years.
And initially, I didn't even tell my brother the details of what I had experienced. It was just too traumatic. But the turning point was the hypnosis. It was done with a technique allowing me to go back there as an observer rather than as someone who's experiencing it. And that isolation from the circumstances there spared me the incredible fear that had gone on during my experience. So that was a turning point for me, and that was the first time that I had told anybody what had happened aboard the craft.
Audrey.
Well, nice to meet you, Travis. I am a former meteorologist turned pastor, and have a background in earth science. So the tree ring video that I saw on YouTube, where you went back to the site and were showing the aberrant tree ring growth, it's a remarkable visual. I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that in a tree, and I've certainly cut down a number of trees in my day. I wanted to ask you, how many trees did you find the aberrant ring growth on, and where were they in relation to?
Well, just the trees closest to the edge of the clearing where the craft had descended, and the effect quickly faded the farther into the woods that you got there. And this stimulation of growth, there was another case. It was the Chernobyl nuclear accident. The dispersal of radiation in that area, there was actually a scientific paper published about the accelerated growth that these trees experienced. And it's interesting because you would expect radiation to kill living things, to maybe cause the trees to wither and die. But no, it caused them to grow more rapidly. It's some kind of response to injury, I'm sure, but that was an interesting discovery to see a scientific paper published on the radiation effects on the Scots pine tree species surrounding the Chernobyl nuclear accident.
You've referenced radiation a couple of times. Have you yourself had any tests done for any radiation poisoning, or you've had any effects that might point to your exposure to radiation?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was borne out. I expected negative health effects, but it was actually quite the opposite. Over the next period of years, I even though I was pushing myself very hard, long hours to sort of forget what had happened, I never got sick. I never called in sick one time during that 10 or 15 years after it happened. And that was contrary to my expectations, but it was quite a relief that I was actually extra healthy rather than extra plagued with some sort of effect.
You know, that in itself is very rare for someone to go that long without getting sick. Do you attribute possibly some benefit effect to the medical
maybe
care you
just some
received?
kind of overcompensation. I think these beings took me aboard in order to repair the damage that had occurred, and as a side effect, apparently, maybe just helped me just resist, common colds and things of that nature.
Interesting. Don, what do you have to say?
Well, first, I want to welcome both Travis and Jennifer to the show. It's a distinct pleasure to have you both on. And Travis, I don't know if you will recall, because I am sure by now you have done, if not hundreds, many hundreds of interviews, radio, and what have you over the years. But back in the 90s, when I was the director of research for UFO magazine, and my wife was the publisher, I had you on, I believe, at least twice on my radio program, UFOs Tonight, back in the 90s. Do you by chance recall any of that?
Probably not.
That's what I thought.
Too many of them. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, at any rate, one of my very close friends out here, and he just passed away a little over a year ago. Travis, you know him very well. And when I tell you who he was, I'm sure you'll know what I mean, was Mr. Tracy Torme.
Oh, yeah.
Tracy was the guy that brought us Fire in the Sky.
Yeah.
And as a kind of a humorous side note, back when that was premiering, okay, Fire in the Sky was coming out, the movie studios did a European contest of sorts. And they asked a series of questions about primarily the UFO topic. And the winners were brought to the United States. And believe it or not, I was the grand prize. I took them all up to the National Forest where the incident happened.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that. It was a heck of a trip, and we had a good time. One of the guys that came over was the equivalent of a city councilman, okay? He was a Brit, and one night we were outside the motel where we were all staying, and he brought out a flask of Irish whiskey. And we sat out there and polished that flash off. So it was a lot of fun. But the other thing I wanted to mention, you and Mike Rogers appeared on Larry King Live.
Yeah.
Okay. And I actually, not personally, but I knew Larry King. I had been on his show probably six times or so. But Larry was one of the only people, other than strip television, of course, which was all pre-taped, but he had live shows and could take calls literally everywhere around the globe that CNN was fed into. And on this night, you and Mike Rogers were on there with, of all people, my dear old friend Philip Klass.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I think it was Mike Rogers, although it might have been you, but I think it was Rogers, that accused Klass of being a government agent or asset. Now, when that happened, he did the same thing on Larry King Live, which was in a way shocking, that he did on my radio show when I challenged him on something. He blew up and he called Mike Rogers. He said, "Mike Rogers, you're a goddamn liar." Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Total profanity on national television.
Yeah.
And, he just totally ignored me and went after Mike. It was really strange because in all those years, he wrote parts of several books to try to discredit the incident and never attempted to talk to me a single time.
Oh, hey,
the
Travis.
media could call me up, but he never bothered. Of course, he badgered Mike Rogers and some of the other crewmen, like Steve Pierce, but never. I thought it was very curious. He didn't think that he ought to at least try to trick me, call me up.
Well, he wrote a book on abductions and never interviewed one person claiming the abduction experience. So, Phil Klass he was no class act. I'll just say that. But at any rate,
the final chapter in that is uncovering somebody else applied through the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, the FBI's investigation of Philip Klass. And there's like 25 pages, much of it blacked out, that investigating him, I guess, for revealing classified information to our enemies, that he had acquired through his job as editor of Aviation Week and Space Technology.
Yes. I was gonna bring that up. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Well, at any rate, it's great to have you on here. I'm looking forward to the rest of the show. Chris?
Well, Travis, this is just amazing. There's a few questions I want to ask you. I want to start with, after you may have been exposed to the radiation from the trees did and everything and stuff, did you ever get a physical afterwards? And did some blood work come back? Did the doctor say, "Hey, I don't know what's wrong with you, but the blood work is kind of screwy," or an EEG was done, or anything?
Yeah, there was. In order to preserve the objectivity of the investigation, the technician, this is an important brain injury hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, the Barrows Neurological, and they had done a brain scan on me, and the technician was not told that I was the guy that was in the news, just to keep his measurements on this brain scan objective. And there was an oddity in the brainwave scan. There's something, I still have the report. It's something like a bisynchronous alternating wave, alternating from front to back. But subsequent repeat of the EEG MRI did not reveal that it had disappeared in the meantime. So apparently some kind of residual injury effect that disappeared.
Did any of the blood work come back abnormal, or something that may have been different from what you've had before?
I think that came back as normal. I can't remember.
Yeah, Jennifer's shaking her head saying, "Yeah, it came back normal." So, because that's interesting that the EEG came back with, an anomaly that, it can't be explained. But also, Travis, we talked about this before, and very few people know about this, but you've had more than one encounter, correct?
I guess you could say that. Yeah. I try to stick to things I can prove.
You-
Does no good to talk about anything where I
well, I
don't.
believe you. So, I mean, can you want to talk about that other encounter that you had?
Well, this happened in 2013, I think. I'm not sure. It was the day that Tracy Torme spoke at Burbank, California, and also the new head of MUFON was gave a talk. But after they were done, my son and I and my girlfriend headed home, and we saw a light coming towards us very quickly, impossibly fast, and it stopped right over the top of us. What looked like one light at a distance turned out to be three. It was the light at the point of a giant black triangle, huge, maybe a quarter of a mile across. I mean, it was gigantic, very low. I mean, it was so low, I think we could have hit it with a rock if we'd have thrown a rock at it. So it stopped right over the top of us. It sort of tipped up a little bit right when it stopped, but it was amazing how fast it could decelerate. It turned 90 degrees to its right and then shot off towards the Pacific Ocean. But now, whether this was a giant alien triangle or some secret government weapon, I don't know. In either case, I think they had to be aware of us being there because, you know, this is Los Angeles, a high population density, and yet stopped right over the top of us. By the next morning, over a dozen people had reported seeing the exact same thing. People who didn't know each other, they just reported it independently of us. And
Travis, was there any effects from that you felt or not?
no fear.
I can't blame you. I don't know. I mean,
If it was the government that wanted me to report it as a UFO, or if it was the aliens, they're just saying hello, you know, they stopped right over the top of us. I thought it was way against the odds that they would stop right over the top of us. Something that gigantic and that huge.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm sure that they knew it was you and all of that. But the other thing that I wanted to ask you before I turn it over to my cohorts here, very few people know about the part of your abduction where I think it's really a great story, is that you thought you were in a hospital when you started waking up.
Yeah.
I think you started thinking, and the people around you thought, oh my God, there's doctors. You felt something on your chest. And
I felt injured. I couldn't focus. I just thought that somebody had taken me to the hospital, that I'd been injured. And then when I could finally focus, I saw these creatures standing over me.
What was your first thought? Did you go, oh my God, what the hell? Did they die or what? Yeah.
Yeah, I got very combative, even though I was in a very weakened, injured condition. And it was kind of a bit of a standoff there, and then they turned and left the room.
Yeah, I guess there was a standoff. Do you pick some way I understand it is that you picked something up and started swinging at them?
Yeah, one of their tools or instruments, whatever there, I picked it up and swung it at them through the air with a striking motion. They weren't close enough to actually hit, but it was designed to keep them from coming any closer.
Did they get any message from you and say, "Hey, take it easy. We're trying to revive you," or
No,
Hey,
I'm
we-
thinking that, maybe normally they have some kind of ability to send a telepathic signal, but I think that because of my recent injury that they were unable to control or communicate with me, unfortunately. And so I think that's why they summoned help that I would cooperate with, something that looked human.
Gotcha. All right, Padre. Well, you're muted, Padre. You're still muted.
No, I'm not.
Oh, there you are.
There
Okay.
you go. Travis, I'm curious. This is kind of a strange question, but lately we've seemed to have people speculate more that there's a greater possibility these beings are interdimensional than from another planet. Do you have an opinion on that?
I think that's possible. And the reason being because any other star is so far away, it would take enormous amounts of time to come here if they didn't have some way of short-circuiting that.
Now,
But,
Did
our own astronomers are, quite, they've gained a better understanding of what's out there. They had something called the Drake equation, a formula that they used to estimate the number of possible civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. But the figures that they were injecting into the equation were far too conservative. They now have adjusted their thinking that probably every star has about a dozen planets, and that the odds of there being other life-supporting planets, some of them far older than ours, they're not all young planets like us. Humans have been around for a few thousand years, but it's possible that the planets that these beings have been on may have been around for millions of years. They could be way, way ahead of us. Of course, there's the possibility that there's cave aliens out there, but they're not the ones coming here.
so my next question is a personal question. Please feel free to decline. But prior to your experience, did you hold any religious or spiritual beliefs, and how have they changed, or have they changed since the experience?
Well, I've had some spiritual beliefs my whole life, and not the religion I was raised in, but I think that whatever is in charge is far, far greater, than many people conceive. It's just the limit of what they can conceive of, I guess.
Some people have testified to something called a hitchhiker effect, where what they call high strangeness or weird happenings follow them after an experience. Have you had that?
No, I don't think so. I think, what a lot of people don't understand is that there's nothing supernatural about visitors from another planet. It's just like, duh, once you understand the size and age of the universe, the other question is that some people ask, well, where are they then? Because it was inevitable that they would explore, and I think they are. It's just that there's a certain respect that's being. It's kind of like in science fiction. The Star Trek had this thing called the non-interference directive, and they felt that it was not moral or right to introduce a technology beyond what they had the inhabitants had already come to on their own. And I tend to agree with that idea. I can imagine that if the aliens that are coming here suddenly said, could people say, well, why don't they just land on the White House lawn and say, here's how to have free energy? Well, that would be extremely destructive. It would destroy.
Yeah. Well, I think they're heavily invested in energy stocks. Anyway, Commander Cobra, your turn.
So I'm going to first jump to a question that's in the chat room. Travis, did you have any checks for implants? And the question was, how do you think that they found you?
Yeah, I do think, there were people looking to x-ray me and see if I had any implants. Nothing was discovered, but I do think they are capable of locating individual people. I didn't used to think so. I thought, it would be like me walking past an anthill and saying, I think I'll stop and have a conversation with that ant right there. But on the contrary, it's more like we're not that insignificant. They can keep track of vast amounts of knowledge and data. And I compare it to the Utah Data Center, some government computer that is supposedly recording all of the electronic transmission on the face of the earth. And, there's millions of gallons of water just to cool those computers. And if mere humans can keep track of that much data, these aliens probably, if you saw one when you were young and you see one as an adult, they know it's you. But they're not landing on the White House lawn and making open contact, because that would be destructive. So on the other hand, I think that they could do everything they're doing here and remain undetected if they wanted to. So the glimpses that people are having, I think, are intentional.
Do you think that's part of an experiment, or do you think that is just the price of doing business?
I think it's not. I think it's no accident. That would be stupid. I make the joke of them slapping their forehead and said, "Oh, dang, human spotted us again. We're going to have to be more careful next time." No, I really do think that sightings are deliberate and allowed, and it's a kind of a customization that is permitted, because we gotta grow up. And humans landing on the White House lawn would be destructive, but it's filtering down, put it that way.
Well, I'm going to throw a quick question into Jennifer's sphere. What do you think is the next piece to this kind of this celebration? Here we are at 50 years.
Well,
do you think we have a good possibility of getting a better rendition, a better recording? Do you think that that's on the horizon?
Oh, you mean like a film, like a better film?
And I'm talking
from Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, I think the work you did is better than most of the stuff that Hollywood does on a regular basis, because it's genuine and it has some logical ethos to what you're trying to talk about. But I think it's obviously a commercially viable project. Yeah. So what I'm kind of poking at is, do you think there's something maybe a little more sinister behind it, a delay on this, or what?
Oh, there are definitely sinister powers at play. Just looking at the debunking that has gone on, just on Travis's case alone. But you can put Travis's case and, say, the Betty and Barney Hill case together and look at a major attack that happened starting in 2021. It was an international attack with websites and big podcast programs and multiple people watching. I mean, my internet, my email, my texting, blew up. Jen, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? And I just was like, oh, wow, isn't that interesting? Like big debunking efforts. And I think that was because the 2017, disclosure with the very famous Lou Elizondo coming out of the Pentagon with the ATIP program and going forward. And since the congressional hearings that we've had, I think leading up to that, there was a effort, like a remake effort. Okay, let's dig out the professional debunkers. Philip Klass is gone, but let's get his cohorts. Let's pay somebody. Let's get a major marketing campaign out there to debunk anything that has to do with personal contact. Because we can talk about the craft in the sky. We can talk about them outmaneuvering our aircraft. We can talk about them rendering our nuclear weapons inert, right? But we cannot talk about contact. We can't talk about bodies. We can't talk about abductions. I mean, all that has been off the table. And there have been deliberate, I would say well-funded, professionally polished efforts to undermine people's understanding of the facts of Travis's case. So that, I think, really needs to be acknowledged. And I might write a book about it. I was starting a book during COVID, watching this all take place. I've basically written about 120 pages, but I haven't published because I have so many other things to do. Right?
Well, fair enough on that. But why do you think that in this particular case, but overall, the abductee portion gets this kind of handling?
Well, just think about it, Commander. Right? If you were,
I have a definite theory. I'll share it with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go ahead.
I thought maybe what happened in the X-Files might be true. There may be a deal. There may be an agreement. There may be hunting licenses, so to speak, that are issued for some hope of something better, or, as they used to say, maybe if I'll get eaten last kind of situation. Well, that's kind of the dark side that I see.
Guys.
Yeah, it is kind of a dark theory. You're absolutely right. But many people in the UFO field, many people I respect, have said, look, it's not us in control of secrecy. And I think that the U.S. government now, through these congressional hearings, is beginning to figure that out. Like, they keep saying, well, who's in charge? Well, shouldn't you know? Well, why didn't you know this? Well, so everybody's kind of passing the buck. But maybe it's them, those that are here visiting us, that really don't want this out. Maybe. I can only respond to the human debunking that I see going on with people that I think are actually human and are doing that. But I don't know if that really addresses the initial question that you had. I think you were saying, isn't it time for a really good Hollywood film to redo this? And I would say yes, because there is so many wonderful little twists and turns in the story that could be put in a new film that would be incredible, because it could include some of the debunking that goes on. And then it could include the fact that there was an FBI agent on the adjacent hill that saw the whole thing, saw the craft, saw it take off. He stayed undercover. He was advised to stay undercover by his upper superiors. And Tracy, you were mentioning Tracy Torme earlier, Tracy uncovered that and interviewed him, but decided not to put it in his film because he felt that, I guess I shouldn't say I know why. Travis may know better than I, but there's that neat little thing, where people say, oh, no, it really didn't happen, or there were no other witnesses, or they were all having hallucinations. No, 7 people do not have hallucinations, right? If you had 7 people witness a murder, wouldn't that be enough to convict, a criminal to, the electric chair? Of course. But if 7 people see a UFO, that doesn't matter, right? So there's also the telephone operator who listened in on the call. A lot of people don't know about that. We didn't put it in the film, I don't think, and not in my film, but it's a great little twisty piece. So for a film writer, right, for a script writer, wow. So they can first claim that he never made the phone call from the phone booth, and then it comes out in the script, which is true. Oh no, a phone booth operator listened in on the call because Travis made a collect call. He didn't have a dime in his pocket. So the operator listened in, heard it was Travis, heard he was asking his family to come pick him up, right? And then he called Marlon Gillespie and said, Marlon, I think Travis is back. He just made a phone call from the Heber phone booth. You better go down and dust for prints, which they did. So, there's all this stuff. And of course, the tree ring evidence. It's hugely important, and that could all come out in a great Hollywood film that could do a couple of years, could do a 40-year perspective on this, how this has affected these guys' lives. It's really an incredible story. And I'm so honored, really. The more and more I think about it, I'm so humbled by Travis's integrity and by his willingness to work with me. I mean, I'm not a known filmmaker, My nephew is a little bit, Adam Stein. He helped me edit it, and he did a fabulous job, absolutely fabulous job. The film would not be the film it is without his input. I had like a 4-hour film, like by October of 2014, and I needed an hour and a half in a month and a half to get it into the film festival deadline for the end of December. And he did it. He just cleared his desk, sat down and did it. And he did an incredible job. So,
Well,
I'm very blessed. We're all blessed.
Well, I think you're the right person to lead the charge. Chris, I guess
I want to get Don in here. Don, before we go to break.
What I have to say is going to go right through the break, so I'm gonna hold off till we come back.
Let me just ask Jennifer. Jennifer, with all that's taken place, and especially people trying to debunk the story, very quickly, people have tried to destroy evidence too, especially at the forest scene.
Oh yeah.
Why? I mean, have you ever gotten a reason why? Is it just because they wanted to go after Travis?
Well, I mean, the tree ring evidence is one of the most profound evidence that exists,
Sure.
So if you destroy that, then people can't go back and look at it. So we did the 2014 site review with Ben Hansen, which you've mentioned before is up on the website at the debunking page. Any one of your listening audiences can go to traviswaltonthemovie.com, find the debunking page, and I have put lots of video evidence up there for people to look at, right? Because people go on these podcast shows all the time, and they can call it up and say, you guys are nuts. Go look at the film footage. It's up there. You can look at it, right? So we put up this 2014 site review that Ben Hansen did. And Ben is well known, former FBI agent. He had a television show called Fact or Fiction, and he wanted to go back to the site. So I said, well, I'll film it. Let's do it. So we went with Travis and we kind of documented, all right, what's in the area? What's here? And that's when we discovered that this rapid tree growth was on only one side of the trees that are in the surrounding area where the craft was. And the rapid tree growth is epicentrically facing where the craft was, which is incredible. So every tree around in a circle had a different rapid growth that faced inward. That's very unusual. The other thing is I did some dendrology research, tree ring research, and rapid growth from increased sunlight is about 10%. Not 33.6 or 36.3% more, right? The only point when you get that is looking at like in-depth, research papers like Travis was mentioning. A Polish university researched the Scott pine trees around the Chernobyl incident, and a 5-mile radius around the Chernobyl incident, Scott pine trees grew at a 36.333% rapid tree ring growth. And that's both what they call the web and the wharf. They have different names for it in dendrology terms, but it's like the wept and it's one direction and the other direction both grow rapidly at the same time. But in Travis's case, it only happened on the side where the craft was facing, not the opposite side. So, and the Chernobyl incident, kind of really demonstrated that it's a 5-mile radius, very rapid tree ring growth, and it dies off after 15 years. This is another thing, like 15 years later, that things seem to settle and you don't see that rapid tree ring growth. Well, that's the same thing we had in Travis's case. You see normal growth up to a certain point, then boom, rapid tree growth, and then it backs back off, right?
Yeah, it's just an unusual anomaly, and you only find it in a couple places. Travis's case, Chernobyl, there's your strongest evidence right there, because, I mean, there's no question that the radiation caused all kinds of effects there.
Yeah.
And with the same thing with trees. So if you have something similar, well away from your first evidence scene, and then you have that evidence scene, I mean, you put 2 and 2 together, and it really does come out to 4. We're going to go to a quick break, folks. Stay with us. We're with Travis Walton and Jennifer Stein. It's a great pair talking about Travis Walton and his history with his abduction. We'll be back right after this break.
To your seats, Cosmic Explorers. KGRA Digital Broadcasting, the unrivaled #1 source for raw, uncensored paranormal and UFO talk radio, has just unleashed a sizzling online merch store. Stay cosmic on the move with accessories, rugged phone cases, vibrant yoga mats, and notebooks perfect for jotting down UFO sightings. Ignite your obsession with the unexplained through bold, exclusive gear that demands attention. Kicking off with the Supernova, the store launches 2 heart-pounding collections, KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Bishop James Long. Every item you grab helps power the network and its groundbreaking shows. Stand with the truth seekers, act fast, score your stellar swag, and join the uprising today.
So you don't care about his life. You just care about covering up your little top secret stuff going on. Meanwhile, this man's dying. How dare you put these people in the military to defend us, and then when they come out, you just kick them to the curb.
MUFON is the voice of thousands of like-minded people who want to see change. We speak up against UFO secrecy. We engage governments and agencies around the world on the topic. We share information with the public through our journal, website, newsletter, social media, and even our own TV channel. When you join MUFON, you add your voice to the cause. Few things are more important in our time than understanding the UFO question. Join MUFON. Find your friends.
Love that music. We are back at UAP Crossfire with our great guests, Travis Walton and Jennifer Stein. Hey, before we start with Don has some questions. Bill, could you put up that Skyfire thing? I just want to go over that again. Folks, 2025 Skyfire Summit. Secrecy to transparency. 80 years of UFO truth now revealed. They got great guests there. Don Childress, Ron James will be there. Stacy Wright, who I love. Melinda Leslie, I've interviewed her. What a story. Don Schmidt, always great. And of course, our guests tonight, Jennifer Stein and Travis Walton. So if you get a chance, October 17th through the 20th of 2025, it's a great time, great people. You got to go. Thanks, Bill. All right. Take it away, Don.
Okay. When Travis was speaking previously in the last segment, he had mentioned his thoughts about the vast distances between star systems and coming here to Earth. And that's a question that I pondered literally for decades now. So first off, let's take a look at we human beings, the human race, Homo sapiens sapiens. Now, if you talk to most experts, they'll tell you that the human race, such as we are today, have been around perhaps anywhere between 200 to 300,000 years. Now, that's not to mention a lot of anomalous, I hesitate to call it evidence, but anomalous things that have been discovered. For example, very human appearing footprints in what is now fossilized rock going back over 1 million years. Who knows what that was? But we ourselves have been here, and for the majority of that time, okay, the majority of that time, because we don't know what happened previous to the cessation of the Ice Age, roughly 12,000 years ago. We don't know what human beings might have been doing then, and there certainly were a lot of human beings then. But since the end of the Younger Dryas period, the last Ice Age we experienced, human beings, for the most part, have been slogging along with some of their most advanced technology being the horse or the oxen and the wheel. Then something happened. And what that something is, God only knows. But Travis, Jennifer, roughly 2 centuries ago, actually 2 centuries and a quarter, about 225 years ago, something happened and we entered the industrial age, all right? The steam engine, steam locomotives, railroads, along a little bit later, telegraph wires. I mean, suddenly our technology began to burgeon outward. Now, in 1903, okay, and yes, I am a frustrated history teacher, but in 1903, the Wright brothers got together and created the first heavier than air machine that flew. The first flight, granted, was only about 59 seconds, but by God, they flew. And pretty soon they were getting up into the air several thousand feet. Now, within 10 years of that, 11 years of that, Europe went to war, and suddenly we have these technological aircraft, these, at the time, marvels of the sky, shooting each other down. We go a little bit further, up into the 30s and the 40s. Suddenly, aircraft technology exploded all over the landscape. And we went literally from horsepower to nuclear power in under a half century. Think about that. It's mind-boggling. Now, there's a reason I'm stating all this. And in 1947, suddenly the United States under, today General Chuck Yeager, broke the sound barrier over 700 miles an hour. And just 44 years previous to that, we could only stay aloft for 59 seconds. My God, that boggles, I don't know about you, that boggles my mind. And then, my God, in 1969, we're landing on the moon. In a century, under a century, we went from the first primitive aircraft to landing on the moon. Now, why do I mention all this? We've been around, let's say, for the sake of the argument, 250, 300,000 years. There are star systems out there vastly older than what we are. We're roughly 4.5, 5 billion years old, the solar system. The planet Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. And life, as we know it today, took millions and millions of years to get to where we're at. Okay, but who's to say what an extraterrestrial race might have done in 1 million or 5 million or 10 million years? The origin of these visitors have always fascinated me. Now, for what it's worth, and I want to get your thoughts on it, Jennifer and Travis, I see the potential of three possible explanations. Number one, okay, before the Ice Age, a lot of people believe that there may have been an advanced human civilization here. Is it possible? Well, sure, it is possible. Do I know that for a fact? Certainly not. But if there were, and if they had a forewarning of what was about to happen here on Earth, perhaps they decided to leave and then later come back. That's one possibility. The second possibility, of course, are extraterrestrial visitors through their technology leaving one star system to come to this one. And what the hell makes us so interesting anyway? And the other possibility, and this is one that I've actually began to theorize is much more possible than I would have guessed 25 years ago, is that there is an interdimensional presence here that somehow bled through from one reality to another. Now, just as a very quick aside, about 15 years ago, my wife and I, Vicki and I usually get up before she does. The coffee's ready to go. She'll come out. We often chat. And I'll never forget one morning, we were talking and I had told her about some off-the-wall, unbelievable news story I had just heard on the radio. Something that was ludicrous, okay? And I said, you know, Vicki, this is only partially a joke. But I said, you know what's happening over in Europe right now at the CERN super collider, right? They're looking for a particle called the God particle. And what they were doing were blasting atoms and what have you around this huge collider, and they would strike each other upon occasion. Even microscopic black holes were created that quickly evaporated. Okay? What if they opened up a rift and suddenly we floated into a different reality? And if you take a look at the news, okay, almost every night you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So, Jennifer, what do you think about that? Do you come down on any of that as possibly reality or no?
Well, it's a long history lesson you've just given us, and I would say it's accurate, very much so. I have also studied history. I was a good friend and a student and a support to Zecharia Sitchin. So I did some film work with him and read his work. And of course, he was a Sumerian scholar, born in Russia, moved to Israel.
We were personal friends, Jennifer.
Okay, so you knew.
I knew Zachariah very well.
So you know his language background and how well he understood cuneiform as well as Hebrew and Aramaic, right? And of course, I'm Jewish, read the Bible, study and practice, can read some Hebrew, and was really intrigued by his understanding that Jewish holidays revolve around the Sumerian history. That the Jewish Bible, the Torah, exists in Sumerian first, then translated into cuneiform first, then translated into.
Well, Abraham, the father of the Israeli nation, the Hebrew nation, came out of the city of Ur on the Chaldees.
Yes. So according to Sumerian records, the Sumerians had a king list that was really long, and they had a timekeeping thing of shars, right? So that goes back much longer than our known established civilization as humans on the planet. It goes back before Sumer. And the Sumerian records say that the Sumerians reestablished civilization on the earth after the flood. So there was a former world, right? An old world, and then it comes back. And of course, it's in the beginning of the Hebrew and Christian Bibles as well. You can see who begot who begot who begot who begot who. So you kind of think, well, why is that in the Bible? Why
a whole lot of fiddling around.
Right. Why is that important? And of course, if you look at the incredible work of Graham Hancock that I follow and love, he has a wonderful series out. I think it's called something about Apocalypse or something like that. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. So like Incredible Apocalypse or something. And he talks about the fact that architecturally, these feet are, these structures are an architectural marvel around the world, and they are probably much, much more ancient. We also know that from the work of Robert Schoch, who I've traveled with and know personally and admire and respect. He and Katie, his wife, their work. And he became quite famous because he said the Sphinx has to be probably much closer to 10, 20, 30,000 years old, because water erosion on stone and rock is pretty standard science. And the water erosion around the encasement wall behind the Sphinx, which has not been resurfaced like the Sphinx has, clearly shows 10,000 years worth of water erosion. But that area has been a dry desert for the last 10,000 years. So how do you make sense of that, right? So then you have to go back. So you're absolutely right. Civilization has probably been around much, much, much longer. And now with our telescopes and satellites, we have evidence that there might have been civilization on Mars, right? And it got exploded. And when you look at the Sumerian records, there's an explanation for how that happened, right? The asteroid belt used to be a planet. That used to be Tiamat, according to the Sumerian records. And Tiamat got hit by Marduk. It broke apart. That's what the asteroid belt is, the remnants of a planet. And what's left of that planet is our planet. That got pushed to the location it is now. And because planets have magnetism, sort of like magnets, they balance themselves on that magnetism, right? So that's what's going on, probably with our history and with our planets.
But the origins of these, we'll call them visitors,
right.
Okay? Where do you fall down on what may be the answer? Do you have any theory?
I think there's more than one species. I suspect the Earth is much like Stanton Friedman would call it. He would say it's kind of like a prison system where people, it's kind of like an island where they throw all these different species and different characters together and see how it evolves. It's a big experiment, right? Will good win out over evil, sort of thing. I think there's probably many species that have had an effect on and tweaking of potential intelligence and our background. So there might be much more than we really know. And
Travis in his account, and I back in the day when my wife Vicki and I were doing UFO magazine, and like I said, Tracy Torme, who was fascinated by Travis's experiences, he and I were very good friends, and he and I, as a matter of fact, discussed that many times. Travis not only saw the creatures that many would call the Greys, but then he was confronted, and I'm going to ask him next, but he was confronted by a being that appeared to be what today we might call a tall, white, or a Nordic appearing humanoid. Okay. So, and hey, the stories that I've collected over the years with the magazine, we've had all kind. I have one account that happened up in Oregon with alleged extraterrestrials that resembled short shrub type bushes. Okay. Reptilians. I mean, there are all kinds of creatures. So yeah, we very well may be, but then that automatically brings the idea, what the heck is it here that they're so fascinated by? Are we really, like the funny monkeys at the zoo? They come down to watch and munch peanuts and popcorn while we carry on our shenanigans?
Jennifer, oh, there you go.
Is Travis there? Is he going to make a comment?
Oh, I would say that's quite plausible. We embarrass ourselves. People think that the aliens are viewing us on our best side. If you step back and take an objective view of humanity, it's much to be embarrassed about. At any one time, there's over 100 wars going on. Principal theme in our entertainment is murder mysteries. Everybody's killing everybody. I think we've got a long ways to go before we're worthy of interacting in the intergalactic community.
But let's not dismiss the ETs if that's what they are so easily. I recently wrote a paper dealing with the question of disclosure, which I have no doubt in my mind it will never be allowed to happen, ever. Okay, not complete disclosure, just won't be allowed.
I agree.
For several reasons, okay? But with that being said, they themselves, the aliens, if that's what they are, have been seen in conflict with each other. And that, God only knows, could be one of the reasons so much of this is kept under wraps, because there is what may be a very low intensity, low grade warfare going on between various ET factions.
What do you think about that, Travis?
I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic. I think that because violence is so stupid, I would hope that any civilization that becomes that advanced, they've outgrown that. And if they didn't, the control of such technology, they would have exterminated themselves. So one way or the other, evil is not something that can persist into the distant future, in my hopeful estimation.
Well, even Jennifer, I'm sure she probably heard this from Zachariah Sitchin. Zachariah and I had a number of discussions about this. There is evidence, very solid evidence, on several areas in Europe and down in the Middle East of nuclear detonations that happened many thousands of years ago. Now, the Indian epics talk about wars among their gods, okay? I don't believe they were gods. They were probably extraterrestrials. But nuclear weapons were used and deployed. And here we were at that time, an absolutely primitive species that had no more reason to be around something like that than a fly on the far side of the moon.
Yes.
Jennifer, you know what I'm talking about, don't
I
you?
absolutely do know what you're talking about. The flying Vinmanas. The Indian history goes back a good 15, 18,000 years. And they talk about the different yugas and the different periods of time and the different warriors and leaders at the time and how they warred with each other. What I thought was very interesting, Don, too, is you might remember in 2006, there was a very significant, substantial earthquake that happened in the Indian Ocean.
Yes.
And that created a tsunami.
Yes.
So the tsunami, before it hits, when it's that large of an earthquake in the ocean retracts right back quite significantly before then the wave takes place and it inundates the land. When that happened, they could see evidence of earlier civilization right off the coast of India, and some people photographed it. It was quite significant. So all these towers started to show and pop up in the water because the water was receding from the shoreline. So there was evidence of sunken cities off the coast of India. And there was even a land bridge that's talked about too. And although that didn't, emerge when that water drew back long enough for anyone to see, you can see it with satellite imagery looking through water, and you can see it with LiDAR technology. So there is quite a lot of interesting stuff that we are really on the precipice, I think, starting to really understand what is about to be revealed. Whether or not we'll learn about the multiple species that may have been interacting with us, may even have been interbreeding with us for decades, I don't know where, when, or where, or how that will happen. But it very well may be true that we are a multiple combination of interspecial breeding, which is why we look so different all across the world, why we have different traditions, different belief systems, and different temperaments. It very well could be. And there are many, many stories, right, of abductions where there is ovum and sperm and things like this taken, which implies that there is something to do with those genetic materials from us that are valuable for them, which also implies that there could be potential breeding. And if we were not related to them, we could not breed, right? So you can't mix, certain animals together because they're not genetically similar enough to allow breeding. But if this is going on, then what does that say? I'm sorry, there's a lot of background noise. Someone might want to think about muting if somebody has some background noise going on. It's hard for the listening audience. But
I don't know. It's yeah, you're right.
History.
I do have a question for Travis, though. I'd like to just kind of swing back to Steve Pierce, because I think this is an amazing thing. Steve Pierce was describing how you got hit with a beam of light, Travis. But people always ask this question when we talk about you, and they say, why did you get out of the truck? And it's always, I got to tell you, Travis, I don't know if he had a few beers, a six-pack, or what beforehand, but I wouldn't have got out of that damn truck.
I wish I had not gotten out. It was a foolish move.
Did you have a little bit of alcohol before you got there or something?
No, you don't do that on the job out there working with chainsaws. It's dangerous equipment. But some girls asked Steve, how come you didn't get out of the truck? And he says, well, I had better mind control resistance.
So why
he said Travis was weak enough to give into it. I said, well, Steve, what if it's the other way around? They were using mind control to keep us in the truck, and I'm the one that resisted it, just being funny. But it was just an impulse, a foolish impulse. I wish I hadn't gotten out of the truck.
Was there any thought in your mind when you got hit with that beam of light?
Well, all thoughts ceased at that point. I was unconscious instantly.
Now, the other thing, I have some friends who are cops, police officers, that we get together, and once in a while we talk about you, and we always question about the polygraph test. Some people will say, it's inconclusive. The polygraph came back inconclusive. And I've talked to Jennifer, I talked to you and stuff, but the polygraphs really didn't come back inconclusive. They actually came back telling the truth. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, of course. Alan Dallas interrupted his test, and because he was just he felt he was being accused of murdering Travis, and he was going to get blamed. But a normal polygraph test is 3 runs through the tests, identical runs, and he finished 2 of his and didn't finish the 3rd one. So, they called it inconclusive, but he basically passed those 2. But he did come back and take a totally proper test. And this was from Arizona State Police polygraph examiner that tested all of us.
Now, these guys, the lead investigator, and I can't blame him because I would have thought the same thing, thought that you were dead. They had searched the woods and they couldn't find you. They were, one of them, I think it was Dallas, wasn't it? They had a bad criminal record.
Yeah, so he was going to get blamed for the murder.
Right. And was there a personality conflict between you and Dallas?
Yeah, we got in a fight that morning, He'd gone to tell this girl that I'd been dating to dump Travis and come with me, I'll spend some money on you. But so we got in a little bit of a fight there in Mike's backyard, waiting to go to work, and he tried to do a spin kick on me and fell on his butt, and the whole crew was laughing at him. So that kind of put an end to that little fight. Mike came out and said, "Come on, let's go, knock it off." And that was all there was to that. But, that little sparring match we had was nothing that serious.
Now, there was a little conflict between the state police, because I think they brought a state police investigator down, right, Travis?
Yeah.
And the sheriff, Martin Gillespie, was it Gillespie, his last name?
Marlon Gillespie was the sheriff.
Yeah. There was a conflict because I think Marlon kind of believed your story where the state police said, "Nah, this is garbage." And
no, I didn't hear any such thing. Marlon Gillespie brought the state police examiner in to test everybody, and they did. And Marlon, I think, was convinced by the evidence interrogating all these men, and that with the polygraph test that they passed. But he didn't admit that he was persuaded by that until much later. Actually, I think Jennifer's film was when he first admitted that he was believing, but that was after he'd left office.
Now,
and I'll interject. The first question we asked him, I asked him while I was still setting up the camera equipment. He didn't even know we were rolling. I said, "Did you ever see something on your own?" And he went on for 20 minutes explaining it, and it's up on my website. People can watch it for free at the debunking page.
Oh, wow. So he actually admitted that he...
Oh, yeah. He had multiple, encounters himself, and he described one of them, which really confused him. So
it's their job to be out at night and keeping their eyes peeled.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's just, this is an amazing case where law enforcement gets involved. And of course, years ago, law enforcement, when they get a call about a UFO, I had them when I was a patrol cop working in my car. I get a call, "Chris, can you go down so-and-so? They saw a UFO." And I'd have to key the mic so they didn't hear me laughing in the background, and go to some lady's house and go, Okay, where's the Martians? Hey, you Martians, get out of the backyard. They're gone, lady. And away I go. That's how you used to handle it. I mean, and then your story comes up where, okay, I look at the evidence and I go, oh, they passed the polygraphs, and the stories are consistent and they're not changing. And even under the threat of maybe getting arrested for murder, they're still being consistent with their stories. So it kind of made me say, hey, wow, this is an incredible thing. And before I turn it over to the other guys here, I just wanted to say, Jennifer, what is your next project do you think you're going to do?
You mean a film project? Right now,
because I love your films.
Well, I don't have another film project I'm doing. I mean, it's a lot to run a conference, and I'm sitting here actually doing name tags right now for the Skyfire Summit. I don't know. I'm 70. I'm thinking about okay, I'll just do some MUFON programs and retire. But who knows? I may have another film under my belt, but I haven't started on a project.
Oh, I hope you do, because you make fabulous projects. Padre, what is yours?
Well, I have two questions. One is for Travis concerning his encounter, and it has to do with the instruments or technology that he observed aboard that craft. We have seen quite an evolution just in our lifetimes, Travis, from rotary phones mounted on walls to eventually, the more compact ones on the desk, and then the mobile phone and so forth. What can you tell us about the technology that you observed? Did it appear to be beyond digital, or was it digital? Were there any kinds of symbols?
Well, there were some objects that I just couldn't identify. It's because it's technology beyond anything we have. And, I'm a kind of a, technical sort of person, and, hobbies and stuff. But I couldn't identify everything that I saw there. And I didn't have time to toy with it. I was terrified and just wanted to get out of there any way I could.
Were there any instruments that they held in their hands that they were using to treat you that you can describe?
No, the instruments were laying on the counter there, and I assumed that they had used them at some point.
Yes, Jennifer.
He was when he was coming to consciousness, which was, that's the period of time we don't know how long that was. Was that 5 minutes? Was that 2-3 hours? That's when he thought he was in a hospital and he thought he was being cared for. There was a device laying across his chest. Remember that. Okay. Again, all this is up at TravisWaltonTheMovie.com in a little clip. It's called the Onboard the Craft Experience. So there's a device across his chest. His clothing is pushed up, and it's a semicircle of light, heat and light, and it's pulsing and whatnot, and it's treating him. And he knows he has a hard time breathing, and he has a lot of pain in his chest, but he's being treated by this device, and he can't see very well, and he can't hear very well because he's probably coming back to life, right? And he gets his eyes to be able to focus. Now, Travis, you interject if I have this wrong, but this is not well described in any other place except in my film. And you kind of have to just watch it and understand it. But as Travis described it to me, his eyes start to be able to focus on this thing that's only this far from him, right? On his chest, this device. And once his eyes can focus on that, then he can focus a little further out, right? And that's when he sees these three faces roll over him and look at him, right? And he realizes, oh, they're not doctors. He originally thought he was looking at doctors with like doctor hats on and masks, on the bottom of their face, like you would in an operating room. And that's what he thought he was sort of seeing because he couldn't see so well. But when they leaned over him, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm not in Kansas, right? So that's when he knocked one of them, hit one of them. They fell back onto one of the other aliens behind him. And then they all kind of gathered on one side of the table, and Travis rolled off as angry, trying to get away from them. He rolled off the table, and that device fell off, and it rolled on the floor, and it put weird light on the ceiling. going back and forth. He told me he remembers this. And that's when he grabbed for a tool, thinking he was grabbing like what looked like a long glass column. He thought he could break it on the table he just rolled off of and have something sharp to defend himself with. So that's one piece of technology. The other piece of technology, which I think was amazing for 1975, is when he walks, they leave and he walks out of the room he's in and tries to find a way out of the craft, right? And he finds another room and he walks into it, and it's a round room, and in the middle is this egg-shaped pedestal chair. So he thinks, oh, there could be another gray alien in that chair. I better be careful. So he walks around the edge of the outside of this room that's round until he can see. Yeah, that's the great picture. Thank you. Until he can see that there's nobody in the chair, right? So then he goes over to the chair. But as he walks across the edge of that room to the chair, the room becomes like a planetarium. The floor, the walls, the chair, the ceiling, I mean, everything becomes a planetarium. And he's like, whoa, what's happening? So he takes a couple steps back, and it goes back to looking like a normal room. So there was some sort of technology that I called the proximity sensor. As he got close to the chair became a nighttime star proximity. And then Travis also played with some of the buttons on the chair. And then the stars were moving. Whether or not
they kicked you off the ship.
We don't know. Whether the craft was moving, we don't know. But the stars were moving. So it could have been just like a GPS positioning thing. Like we can go on Google and get MapQuest directions, right? Pop up for us. Or we can go now and look at, satellite images or something. Maybe it was that. But that was interesting technology for 1975.
Now, what you just said is fascinating to me. You said he pressed buttons. Okay, what does a button do? A button completes a circuit of energy. Right. So when we're talking about buttons, not everything is operated by the mind. There's been speculation that this is all, mind controlled. So there's some mechanics involved in that. And I find that interesting.
There were also doors, sliding doors and things like that. Like that's when the Nordic or the human looking alien showed up. Once he started pushing those buttons and the positioning of the navigation room is lack of a better word to describe it. What looked like a planetarium sky to him all around 360-degree planetarium shifted. That's when, and that disoriented Travis because he's already weak, can't breathe, is in pain. And, this is happening all around. I mean, what it's like being in your car, right? And another car backs up next to you and you're like, oh, am I moving? And you put your foot on the brake, right? Well, just imagine that 360 degrees all around you. After the experience Travis had, it was very disorienting for him. And that's when this Nordic man came in with a helmet on that he thought was a human. I mean, his initial thought was, oh, it's NASA. They come to rescue me, right? It's humans, It's, Cape Canaveral. They've sent someone to get me. Wow. And he starts blabbering away. Where am I? Can you get me back on the ground? And they're not answering him at all.
Mm-hmm. Commander, your turn.
Well, Travis may have something he wants to say about this. I don't know.
Go ahead.
No, I got to get going here. I've got some things that are pressing right now.
Well, Travis, it's been absolutely wonderful to have you with us tonight, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Travis, very much.
It's been interesting talking with you guys.
Travis, did I describe that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
I just like to double check. Thank you. See you in 2 weeks.
I look forward to seeing you again, Travis, in person.
Yeah, we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, Commander, you're up for Jennifer.
So, Jennifer, it seems that you've had a real discovery with everything that you did with Travis. But I don't think this is the only thing that's gone on. It seems to me that you have a fairly rich background in a whole bunch of areas, and you seem to be kind of coalescing everything into one kind of I would say an understanding that you've laced together a lot of things that we've all talked about on this show as hosts and other shows separately. But I didn't hear your answer on disclosure. I looked at your facial expression. Travis agrees with Don's remark that he doesn't think it's going to come out. What do you think?
It's, that's the $64,000 question, Commander.
Well, with inflation, that's now 1.6 million, but go ahead.
Right. I would like to think, in my opinion, I think we've had disclosure, really. I mean, you can look at Luis
I think it's a fair way to look at it.
But I would also say that came with permission. You have to remember that leaving a job in the Pentagon like Luis had, going public with videos on YouTube, working in coordination with Harry Reid, right? And with the New York Times, right? Who knew they were going to be breaking the story months before this happened, right? You look at those great reporters who did that, Leslie Keene and Helene Cooper and Ralph Blumenthal. That doesn't happen by chance. So it might be that disclosure is something that those that are in control behind the scenes, those hidden beings or those hidden people, we don't know who they are. Some people call them the Bilderberger group or whatever. They often create an event or create something to happen that creates a reaction, and that reaction is where they want the direction of everything to go. That's the typical understanding of the paradigm that we live in. So, yes, I think disclosure is happening. I think disclosure with a little d, as Nick Pope says, has happened. Whether or not we will have disclosure with a big D, I don't know, but I am very suspicious if we do. If you see the president come on the television and say, oh, we're being invaded by aliens and we must unite the whole world together, sort of like we did in COVID, right? There was movement in that direction. That made me very uncomfortable. I felt like I was being manipulated, and I didn't trust everything I was getting in the mainstream news because I got too much of the same message, even the same wording, even the same inflections, right? So I don't trust a lot of politics. I don't trust a lot of major news. I think to know what's going on these days, you have to be psychic. I'm sorry, but I think you have to develop deep inner knowing. You have to have a good understanding of history like Don does, right? And you have to kind of have a jigsaw puzzle in front of you. And you may not have all the pieces, but you look for the correlations, you look for the pieces that fit together, right? And we have to be suspicious these days, very, very suspicious. In fact, Werner von Braun, right, who worked with Carol Rosin, he often predicted that there would be multiple wars, and he laid them out for her in 1976. He said there would be a war on drugs. There would be a war on terror. There would be a war on cancer, right? There would be a war in the Middle East. There would be a war on this and a war on that. And the last final war, and they would all be wars of manipulation, right? They would be not that they're false wars, but their wars were manipulated into because it solves another problem, right? And he said the last war would be this war of an alien invasion, and we would be told we're being invaded by aliens, but they're all false.
Well, let's not forget, okay, I get honestly sick to my guts when I hear von Braun's name. Oh. Nobody mentions that he was an SS colonel.
Yes, he was.
He was a slave master.
Yes.
Deaths of thousands and thousands were on that guy's hands.
Not exactly. He was an engineer working for the SSS.
He ran Peenemünde.
Okay.
His rockets rained down all over Great Britain.
Yes, they did. Yes. And he well admitted.
The guy should have been hung.
Maybe. You might be right. Scientists often get caught into politics of the time. Even Einstein admitted that. And he got many scientists to write about what they felt they should not have done in the development of the atomic bomb. In fact, my father-in-law worked on that. So I'm well aware of what you're saying, Don. You're absolutely right. He was also a scientist and a well-respected one. And
so was Dr. Mendele.
Ooh.
Yeah, but didn't bring him here.
One thing I do want to ask,
Yeah, go
Jennifer,
ahead.
before I turn it over to the Padre.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you don't impress me as somebody that needs disclosure to validate anything that you've concluded?
No, I've had personal experiences myself. Once you have a sighting, you know,
Do you think you have to have a sighting to?
No, but I think when you have an experience, like you have a car accident, right? You know how dangerous driving a car is. You have a baby, you know how difficult it is to give birth, right? Once you walk through certain doors, you have an experience that no one can take away from you. And that changes your level of understanding of a situation.
Padre.
Well, I know, and we've got Jennifer here just for a few more minutes. I wanted to ask you about your crop circle research.
Yes.
Would you share with us how you got involved in that, and maybe some of your more interesting research in that?
Well, that's hard to do in just 2 minutes, but I will tell you, I was just on Coast to Coast with George Norrie and Cheryl.
Okay.
And your listening audience, if they belong to Coast, they can go listen to it. It was only about a week ago. And I went into depth about many things, including extraterrestrial perception, precognition, ESP, psychic abilities, and also some of my crop circle work. But I will say there's a very exciting future for crop circle researchers. Now with AI, I think we can take those geometries, put it into, geometric mathematical evaluations and get back incredible in-depth information that we wouldn't have been able to do,
I've done that
10 years ago. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I've done that with AI. I've taken images from crop circles and I've fed them in, and I asked them to cross-reference, all known languages, all known alphabets, all known religious symbols. And at least in the crop circles that I've looked at, they were unique symbols.
Yes. Yes. Well, Dan, we should talk off air again, because I have some other research, which is ancient slate seals, cylinder seals, not cylinder seals, but ancient slate tablets that have been dug up in Michigan. And they have Greek, hieroglyphics, and another language on them. We're trying to decipher really what they mean. And I'd love to do that. And I'm not quite sure how to, but we should talk.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Jennifer, what I wanted to ask you, I didn't get a chance to ask Travis. I've investigated a lot of abduction cases with MUFON. One of the things they all have in common, a lot of them, is that they always tell me, they say, Chris, for some reason, I've been downloaded with some information, but I can't retrieve it. It's there. I know it's there, but I cannot bring it to the forefront. I can't bring it to where I understand it or even know what it is. Did Travis have the same experience with that? Did he feel like he was downloaded with something?
No, he did not. When he woke up on the side of the road just outside of Heber, he knew exactly what he had experienced. He didn't need a regression to remember it. What he needed the regression for is to lower his stress level, because he was so freaked out that he couldn't even begin to recount it without his teeth shattering and his whole body going into a reactive panic. So that's why James Carter, what happened? I was waking up, I saw these beings, walk through the onboard the craft experience, which he has done. And then he wrote about it. He's only really ever, I think, done that one regression. I don't think he's done more than it, but that's really all he needed. He needed to be coached into how hypnosis is. When someone hypnotizes you, right, they're not really making you do anything you don't want to do. You're there willingly because you want to lower your stress level so that you can access that you didn't have the ability to articulate. That's all. That's all regression really is.
See, there's two things that are very amazing about Travis' abduction. One is that he remembers stuff. Most abductees only have bits and pieces of flashes of their memory. Something will come back, and then you get piece of the puzzle. Another flash will come back, and there's got that piece of the puzzle. Travis was unique. One, I really don't think that Travis was abducted for anything other than saving his life.
Yeah.
I really
agree
in that story. So they kind of went, oh man, look what we just did. We killed this guy, and they took him aboard for the fact of healing him, because throughout the whole story, you understand that he was being healed, he was in pain and everything else. And the other thing that he was never really downloaded like a lot of abductees, and you know that because you were with that. Before we leave, because we only got 2 minutes left, I want to talk to you about Skyfire, the summit, and so before we can wrap up the show.
Thanks. It's going to be a fabulous conference. Our subtitle is called From Secrecy to Transparency. And we're going to try to address the fact that now that everything's kind of, they've been lied to for 80 years, and now suddenly we're going to say, oh, yeah, that's a real phenomenon. And we kept it under wraps because we thought we had to. No, you don't certainly give somebody 80 years of education in a newscast that's a minute long. We're going to start out with Ron James, who's going to show Accidental Truth, which I helped him with. He really did like 99% of this film. I did help it get started in 2018 when we interviewed Lou Elizondo at our Philadelphia MUFON Symposium, which I was the PR director of, or the chairman of. And then Stacy Wright is going to talk about MUFON. She's also going to talk about Sumerian history, ancient human history. Then we're going to jump into Don Schmidt, who's going to talk about Roswell and what really happened at Roswell. Then Travis and I will talk about the 50-year retrospective. And then the next day, Don Schmidt's going to speak about J. Allen Hynek and the Blue Book years, right? And that's where the secrecy started, and how J. Allen Hynek left to form his own organization called CUFOS, which still exists today. And Don ran for many, many years. And then we speak with Melinda Leslie, who's going to share what's going on right under the ground in Sedona, right, in Australia, who came in. And I think their series on this has already aired, but if it hasn't, I'm probably not supposed to talk about it, but I think it's already aired. And
I think it's pretty good to say that. Yeah, you're on safe ground.
And then we're closing. This is really important. We're closing with the New Paradigm Institute's Global World Disclosure Day. But we will have Don Schmidt probably make a recorded statement for them, and we'll be watching it, and they will be acknowledging Travis on his 50th anniversary. And that's with Danny Sheehan and the New Paradigm Institute. So if anyone doesn't know their website, New Paradigm Institute, or Googled Global World Disclosure Day and sign up to watch it. It will happen on Sunday afternoon when we're having our conference. But I think it starts at 10 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, and then goes till about 5 p.m. And it's excellent. It's excellent.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we're going to wrap because we're out of time. Jennifer, thank you for the entire crew here. We want to say good night. Stay safe.
Thanks, Travis.
Yep. And keep looking